Well, on McBlog, we often look at political leaders from other related countries. We've looked at the political leadership of Canada. Obviously, the US has been a focus, also Australia. But in the UK, there is a new leader of the Conservative Party, the opposition, Kemi Badenoch. Have you heard of her? Nope, I haven't either. So let's check her out. So Kemi Badenoch has won the Conservative Party leadership. Now remember, the Conservative Party got thrashed in the election last year by the Labour Party. But the Kemi Badenoch becomes the first black person ever to lead a major party in Britain. Now, David Farrar from Kiwi Blog, I'm grateful to him, he did a bit of a summary and he wrote that Badenoch is the 19th leader of the UK Conservative Party. She's the fourth woman and the second non-white to lead the party, while UK Labour, ironically, have had 19 white male leaders in a row. So that's not very woke, is it? Now, this, of course, has not stopped a Labour MP in the UK calling her a white supremacist in blackface. Yeah. Now, a couple of quick facts from McBlog. She is from Kiwi Blog, sorry. She is 44, making her the fourth youngest leader. She was born in London, lived outside the UK and Nigeria and the US until she was 16, has a Master of Engineering degree, gained a law degree while working as a software engineer. She voted for Brexit. She's been an MP for only 7 years. And in terms of family, she's got 3 children aged from 5 to 12. Now, here's her speaking in 2017, just after being elected.
When I joined the Conservative Party, many Labour activists couldn't believe that a black woman could be Conservative. They said it was a lapse of judgment, that I'd soon be running away, screaming, from all the white middle-aged Conservative men and their prejudice. When I was a candidate in London in 2010, they called me window dressing, said I would never get a winnable seat. When I was shortlisted for Saffron Walden, they told me Essex would never select me. And when I was elected this year, they simply couldn't believe it was possible. They are in denial. I know, and you know, that it's the Conservatives who are the party of opportunity. And I never experienced prejudice in the Conservative Party and would not be here today without the white, middle-aged Conservative men who encouraged me and mentored me.
Yeah, ironic, isn't it? I mean, black woman from Africa, all the intersectionality is there, but it doesn't count if you're a Conservative. Now, here she is in her acceptance speech this week when she was elected as leader of the Conservative Party.
Our first responsibility as His Majesty's loyal opposition is to hold this Labour government to account. Our second is no less important. It is to prepare over the course of the next few years for government, to ensure that by the time of the next election, we have not just a clear set of Conservative pledges that appeal to the British people, but a clear plan for how to implement them. A clear plan to change this country by changing the way that government works. The Prime Minister is discovering all too late the perils of not having such a plan. That huge job begins today.
Now, our good friends in the UK, Christian Concern, have put together a summary of who she is. She's the Member of Parliament for North West Essex, elected 7 years ago. And here's their summary. Now, she's got a mixed record of voting on issues to do with abortion up the top there. That's why they've put it in yellow. She's been absent for several key votes, including the vote that imposed abortion on Northern Ireland. She voted against allowing abortion pills to be posted without in-person consultation, so that's good. She voted against introducing buffer zones around abortion places that offer support or pray around abortion clinics 2 years ago, so that's good. However, she voted in favour of regulations to give the Northern Ireland Secretary new powers to impose commissioning abortion services, and 2 years ago of increasing those powers, not good. And she also voted in favour of a motion to impose teaching about abortion on schools in Northern Ireland last year. Her views are unclear. Second one down, unclear when it comes to euthanasia and assisted suicide. There's been no significant votes on the topic in Parliament while she's been there, although I think that issue will come up soon. Third one down, when it comes to issues of marriage and family, she's got a generally unpromising record. She wasn't in Parliament when same-sex marriage was introduced in 2013, but she says she supports it. She was absent from the votes in 2019 to introduce it in Northern Ireland. I'm always suspicious of a politician who is absent for key moral votes like that. She did, however, defend the right of another MP, Kate Forbes, to oppose same-sex marriage when Forbes was campaigning to lead the Scottish National Party. She was absent from the vote on no-fault divorce in 2020, once again absent. Does she actually turn up to work? Nevertheless, she does have a positive record in green there on the whole transgender issue. She was the Minister for Women and Equalities earlier this year, and she asked members of the public to submit examples of bad guidance on single-sex spaces. A couple of months ago, she suggested that the Conservative Party would change the law so that trans people would be excluded from single-sex spaces, and she planned to change the Equality Act so that sex was defined biologically. I know, shock horror. Now, she also proposed a law to make sure single-sex toilets were available in new non-domestic buildings. A little bit like what New Zealand First has proposed. And she argued in last year that gender-affirming care for children is a form of conversion therapy, which is true. However, she kept saying that she intended to bring forward legislation to ban conversion therapy, which, as we know, is a ban on consensual conversations. And of course, it means that parents have to endorse their child's gender identity. Now, Badenoch is married to a Catholic man with whom she has 3 children. She has described herself as an honorary or associate member of the Catholic Church. Not sure if that's even a title, is it? When asked whether religion plays a part in her politics, she replied, quote, "Not particularly, no. I define myself as a cultural Christian. My grandfather was a reverend." And she said, "So I'm agnostic, really, but I was brought up with cultural Christian values." Well, that's nice. She was brought up with the values, but she doesn't want to seem to own them. However, during which one is it? It's this one. During Black History Month in October 2020, Badenoch pushed back against calls for more teaching of black history in schools, saying she did not want white children being taught about white privilege and their inherited racial guilt. Now, Brendan O'Neill has written a very good, he's a chief political writer for Spiked Online, and he writes that she had a solid win for the leadership position. It was about 60% versus 40% against the second competitor, but that she would fight the cultural war. I just want to read some excerpts from it because it's very good. Towards a readiness, even a glee, to lock horns with a political class that has thrown everything from biological truth to our very own national story onto their bonfire of the vanities, Kemi could be the cultural warrior we've been waiting for. She has more than proved her mettle in the battle of ideas. She knows what a woman is. And of course, the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, is a little bit like Chris Hipkins on that one, apparently. Badenoch hasn't so much waded into the trans row, as the media like to describe it, as she has marched in, sort of truth raised. She insists we must protect women's spaces from the presence of men, whether it's rapists being housed in women's prisons or men playing in women's sports. It's just not on, she says. And we must be free to say so without the fear of being accused of transphobia. 3 cheers for that. She has stood up for the right of young gay folk to discover their sexuality without being pumped with puberty-blocking drugs or mauled by surgery to correct their wrong bodies. She has challenged the fashionable view of Britain as institutionally racist. Actually, she says this is the best country in the world to be black. Her praise of this plucky nation that sees people, not labels, infuriates the mostly white wet wipes of the opinion-forming classes who get off on flagellating both themselves and the kingdom for all the racial crimes of history. To these people, there's nothing worse, really nothing, than the sight of a black lady saying, "It's good to be black in Britain." It shatters their ideologies of self-loathing from which they derive their cultural powers and media clout. A black woman nipping at the heels of the fashionable shame of white influences? It just won't do. She's an enemy of cultural relativism. She recently said not all cultures are equally valid, to the noisy chagrin of the woke. They know she's right. These people would never move to Kabul or let their daughters suffer the female genital mutilation that poor girls in Africa are forced to endure. But they hate that she says it anyway. For in doing so, she punctures their cult of post-judgmentalism, their moral cowardice that they dole up as a celebration of diversity. She's even injected moral clarity into the tortured and frankly terrifying Israel-Hamas debate. I stand with Israel, she said. We cannot stand with Hezbollah. We cannot stand with Hamas. Then her killer line, we know who the bad guys are. She has slammed cancel culture. She said we need more bravery and less cancel culture. And she also fiercely rebuked the Californian tech bosses who exercise a moral stranglehold over the modern public square. It's a very serious problem when tech giants become so big that they effectively become more powerful than government in regulating what people say, she says. And she defends Brexit. The right of the 17.4 million souls who voted to leave the EU to have their wishes acted upon by the political class. This is why the left is peed off. This is why they cannot celebrate the remarkable ascendancy of this 44-year-old woman of colour to the top of Britain's oldest political party. Now, the LGBT groups aren't too happy either. And they say that in Pink News, they say that Badenoch has positioned herself as one of the UK's government's most vocal opponents to LGBTQ plus rights. This is when they were in power before the last election. They're annoyed that she met with the LGB Alliance without the T, the transgender. So, you know, the LGB that rejects choosing your gender, so it's transphobic. A bit of an internal strife there. And she also described trans women as men in a leaked recording. And in that recording, Badenoch could be heard saying, it's no longer about minority rights in terms of race anymore or nationality. It's now, you know, like it's not even about sexuality now. It's like the whole transgender movement. We've got gay marriage and civil partnerships. So what are transsexuals actually looking for? You know, like the whole bathroom thing, it's actually more of an American thing, but they have a similar problem. Now, it's not just about being free to marry who you want. You now want to have men using women's bathrooms. Well, excellent point. Now, another criticism was that she worked to quash trans-inclusive workplace policies. According to Pink News, it meant that staff could self-identify their gender, but Badenoch rightly pointed out that we need to understand how you define woman so that we can measure and improve the representation of the female sex in company boards. Yeah, interesting point. But the sin of sins, as we mentioned, she failed to ban conversion therapy when they were in government. She correctly argued that gender-affirming care, i.e. locking children into puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, preferred pronouns and confusion, is a new form of conversion therapy, which is correct. It's just a pity she doesn't realise that the LGB part is also conversion therapy, locking kids into sexual identity confusion. Badenoch spoke about Kira Bell, though, a detransitioner, and said that doctors were fearful of giving honest clinical advice to a child because if they didn't, they would be labelled transphobic, which is what the court said as well, and it's what the recent Cass report also argued. So we will watch with interest how she goes and how long she lasts. Remember a recent leader of the Conservative Party in the UK, Liz Truss, replaced Boris Johnson, became PM on 6th of September and then resigned 45 days later. That's a short reign. The previous record was 119 days by George Canning, who died in office in 1827. Now, just finally, I lined up the analyses that Christian Concern did for all the candidates who were running for the Conservative Party leadership. And have a look. You'll see why the Conservative side of politics is in such trouble worldwide. The green squares means good, socially conservative. Red is bad. Orange is close to bad. Grey, no statements have been made. They're sort of giving them the benefit of the doubt. But you'll see there, the top row, abortion, they're hopeless on abortion at the top. Third one down, hopeless on marriage. They're split on euthanasia and gender identity, the second row and the fourth row respectively. Only one of the candidates is good on the whole conversion therapy ban propaganda, which is along the bottom line there. And we have one person of faith on the far right there. That image sums up just why we have an uphill battle in rescuing our culture from self-destruction. The conservative politicians, the social conservative politicians, have lost their spine and direction. And as a result, the culture and we are paying the price.